This is Johnny.
Yeah.
Can you give a little bit of your CV because it makes it that much more impactful that you're a corruption investigator?
I am Joyce St. George, and I'm in Delaware County, and I was the first female investigator for the Attorney General's, the New York State Attorney General's Special Prosecutor's Office during the 70s, when New York City was plagued with police corruption and corruption within the whole criminal justice system. So it was following Serpico's testimony.
Serpico.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my office was mandated by Governor Rockefeller at the time to the Attorney General to set this office up. So we had state police powers over the entire criminal justice system of New York City. And so we investigated and prosecuted judges and attorneys and district attorneys and police and anybody who was tied into the criminal justice system. So anyway, that was my past life. So when I say Reclaim piqued my interest, it's because I was an investigator. I did some pretty interesting cases, and I know how to put together a case.
And Joyce and I both ran a training organization. And my personal background, retired military. There are liberals in the military, and I was in 26 years in counterintelligence, and that's kind of the oxymoron of military intelligence. But the root of that was uncovering corruption within the military and within some of the structures in the military intelligence end of it. When Joyce and I did work with the state, a lot of it was in workplace violence prevention and crisis management.
Yeah, we ran a training company.
Right. We did it for a lot of it for the governor's office of employee relations, and so we went into this whole thing with Reclaim with an understanding, a pretty good insight into how government workers work. And one of the things we knew from experience is they're not in it for the money, and they really do. The majority of them do take civil service prideful insight and take that quite literally. So when we did the initial, and Joyce started the initial research on Reclaim, it was somewhat with a jaded eye saying, what are these guys up to? So especially when we started seeing the board of directors and who was funding the materials, and I have to tell you, it's really slick materials. As past trainers, we know the amount of money that goes into these things, and the collateral materials for this were incredible.
One of the things that we found with our local newspaper and with other local newspapers as we were meeting and talking was a full-page ad. And it said basically, and let me just sideline, nobody ever pays for a full-page ad in any of our local papers. It's just, I've never seen it done before. Full-page ad, very, very slick, saying something to the effect of, oh, I really want to go on vacation. Oh, I can't. Not this year. Oh, gosh, I really need a new car. Oh, I can't. Not this year. And so then it said something like affordability crisis in New York. We can help. And then that was it. And on the very bottom, all you saw was Reclaim New York. So that piqued our curiosity. And so I went up on the website, looked at it, and beyond the website, there are many, many articles. And that's where I learned that Steve Bannon actually established this. So that piqued my curiosity even more, and that the Mercers have funded it. And I hadn't known that the Mercers funded Breitbart, but they did.
Yes, they did.
Yes. So we started looking into it, and we looked at what was going on in Peekskill and Chester and the lawsuits that they had Reclaim had brought against them. And so I started looking at FOILs, the Freedom of Information Law, and why Reclaim was using that. And so the more and more we researched, the more we found out that what Reclaim is doing is collecting data throughout the entire state from every public entity, county, state, town, village, and school. And they are foiling everybody, and if you don't give them everything that they want when they want it, they sue you.
Again, the whole thing is that there's an affordability crisis. So the report that we got was the affordability crisis as it pertains to Delaware County, and they have all 11 towns and Delaware County listed. And again, I want to do this chronologically so it makes sense. Part of Joyce's research was finding that there was going to be a class held for folks who were interested in reclaiming the work they were doing in Binghamton. And Joyce, myself, and one other person from the area went down to attend that class. And that's where we started to get the material and found that it was really an introduction. It was the second part of a series of programs they're giving. They're trying to create what they call a citizens owners army. It's a bunch of folks who are really interested in finding out where their money is going and how the state is misspending their money, and it all is based on the fact that we start the day off not being able to afford it because of taxes we pay and of the cost of living it isn't to live in New York State. And they give a whole bunch of statistics. The one that was very glaring was that since the year 2000, the state has lost 1.8 million people. What they don't tell you is that 60% of those people are folks who retired and moved to Florida. Those kind of numbers sounded way outside reality, so that's why we started doing the research on it.
Yeah, we spent about 40 some odd years after I left law enforcement training police in hostage negotiations and crisis management and conflict resolution, a lot of different, anything that had to do with emotionally charged situations, we trained them in. So that's a bit of the work that we've been doing. But let me just get back to this because I think it's very important that you hear where they're at now, but you need to understand where they were then. So we're only talking about 6 weeks ago. 6 to 8 weeks ago is when the full page ad came out.
Okay.
So within that time, a lot of things have happened. They've already cleaned up, as they say, Nassau County and Suffolk County out in Long Island, and they've already foiled everybody over there and gotten whatever information they want. So now they've been coming up upstate.
And where are you getting those terms, foiled and cleaned up? You're getting them.
Oh, well, that's part of their training.
Foiled is part of. Foiled is a common term that instead of most people know the Freedom of Information Act.
Freedom of Information, yeah.
But but Freedom of Information Act is a federal law. Freedom of Information law is a New York State law. And so anytime you want to know anything about a public service, a public institution, you can call, you can email, but you can also foil them. And we had a great discussion about what foiling means, but it just means that you want to see whatever public records there are. And so Reclaim's been foiling to get not only your basic information from your towns and counties, they want the checks. They want to see the checkbooks. They want to see the check numbers. They want to see the names.
Well, they want to see the budget line and then where the money for that budget line went and who was the vendor who paid for it. And this is one of the big issues that was happening, I believe, down in Peekskill. Sam, you would know more about that, where they demanded the check numbers for all accounts paid, and there was some back on that, I believe, because of concern around fraud.
But they will sue at that point, and that's what they did to Peekskill School and Chester School and Islip School. They sued them because the school administrators were hesitating giving out more specific numbers because their attorneys advised them that you could be in some way inciting fraud or bringing fraud about. So we kept asking more questions similar to what you just asked. And one of the things that we found out was that they had, Reclaim had foiled our entire area, all of our small towns and schools around us. And so we talked to the town clerks, and they were all very scared. But they gave us the name of Bob Friedman, and he is the executive director of the Committee on Open Government for New York State, and he's with the New York State Department. So we called him, and I explained where we were at and the curiosity that we had. And he said that Reclaim New York actually came to him and asked him to teach them all about foiling, the FOIL law, what they can do, what they can't do.
How to break it down into component parts to make it easier to teach others.
And when we spoke to him, he was very negative about them, and he was very happy that we were doing something. So one of the things that I did was I wrote a letter to the editor for my local paper and for another local town's paper. And from that, I started getting a lot of people's interest. And so then when the workshop by Reclaim came up in Binghamton, we decided to go to it. That's what taught us most of what we learned. And so what they're doing is, number one, they're saying that there is an affordability crisis in New York State, that people can't afford to live here anymore, and that's because of government waste, mishandling, secrecy, and corruption. Do they support that? Yes, but with facts that are so skewed, it was crazy. So we had a friend of ours who's an executive director of basically an economic development engine for this area. And she took apart all their numbers, and their numbers were, they were just very unrealistic. And they would just take numbers that would work for them, that they could say that would basically incite people. Like one of the things that they said is that, that government workers make 40% more than anybody in private industry. So that's one of the things that they're operating with. And they said, 1.8 million people left New York City, left New York State because they can't afford to live here. The facts that they were taking, which is ridiculous. They had, and this is what they do. You could read it in their on their website. They take a family of four and they break them down. They break it down into, if this person made if this family made $50,000, they'd be owning a house approximately $120,000, and their mortgage would be, X number, and their excise taxes and their income taxes and their whatever other taxes, they would have it broken down into 4 different types of taxes, would come down to blah, 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 and then they would throw in transportation and a couple of other numbers.
Well, and let me give you, my choice, the one that just kind of raised the hair on the back of my neck was the single people, recent graduates from college. And they said we'll just focus on the Hancock, because that was a presentation they had last week. They said the wake-up cost for a single person in Hancock making $48,700 a year. They have income tax of 24%, which is $11,500. They have property tax at $2,500 at 5%. They had sales tax at 3%, and excise tax at $239, and basic expenses of $58. And what they had left over out of $48,000 was approximately $4,600, which was about 10%. But then in small print they had, this is a minimum household income, renter, single, recent graduate. And then the word that got to me was renter. What's a renter doing paying property tax? Yeah. When we raised it up for the class, the facilitator just kind of brushed it off. He says, that's just passed on to him. And we pushed back saying, no, because the landlord, then you don't know how many renters that landlord has, and you can't say that what's the value of that property. And they just kind of fluffed it off. So it's that kind of generalities that really kind of raised some red flags. But when we went to the class in Binghamton, there were 15 to 16 people there. They all seemed to be drinking the Kool-Aid. They all seemed to be aligned with that. You know, they had no problem with it.
All right, so now we're talking about the workshop that we were in. There was certain language that was used, and you could tell what the good words were and bad words were. So something like schools was a bad word because they're just a waste. New York State, they were saying, and I have to check this. I don't have it. I haven't researched this yet. They're saying that an average student in New York State costs $22,000 to $24,000, whereas the national average is $12,000. I can't imagine that there's that much of a difference. So school became a very bad word. Unions, forget about that. Was like a red flag. People were like spitting and spewing. Fracking was a wonderful word. So it was that sort of thing that was going on. But the worst thing that was going on in that workshop, and this is, I think, where it becomes more insidious, is not only do they want to claim that they are providing transparency, that's their big thing. Transparency. They have a whole transparency project by doing all these foils. But then this workshop, the goal of it was to encourage us citizens, to create an army of people, our friends, our relatives, our neighbors, who would then also foil our town clerks and our village clerks and our schools. So that it would be a flood. There you go.
So it does up a lot of workers. Exactly. Yeah. And when I said to him, I asked the guy in class, I said, why, you've already supposedly done the heavy lifting because you've foiled all these organizations and you've put it into your data bank. Why not share that with all the citizens? Why? Because if 5 people foil the local town clerk, they're going to get the exact same information, and you're going to make the town clerk go through that process 5 times. Why not just put it out there? And so that was for 2015. We didn't.
You know what this evokes? Why do I think of Grover Norquist when I
yes, exactly.
And Wisconsin and right to work. I guess that's what they'd like.
Well, he said that we did that for ourselves, but it's good to have everybody involved because you're doing 2 things. You're making the public aware, and you're sending the message to the towns and the authorities that they're being watched.
And at the workshop, what they said in response to that question was, we want our towns and villages and schools to know that we have our eyes on them.
All the time.
That's a quote.
Yeah.
We have our eyes on them. So
raises the hair on my neck.
So let me just, because I want to break it down. So we went to that workshop. I think he knew who I was because my letter went to a lot of different places. And we actually had, our local bank was going to sponsor this, the next thing I'm going to talk about. And we actually, between my letter and a couple of phone calls, got them to pull out. And so so what was happening was we went to the Binghamton Reclaim workshop, and at the workshop, the guy, his name is George Phillips, and he is our regional director of Reclaim New York.
Southern Tier. Yeah.
The Southern Tier. And what he was saying to us, because he knew we were from Delaware County, and he knew who I was, and he said directly to me, well, I hear that there's going to be, we're going to be giving a talk at the Delaware Chamber of Commerce on April 7th, and I hear that there's going to be 100 protesters. And we just said, it's interesting, because we'd been talking to our groups, and so people had already bought tickets. That place had never had that many sales. So now my letter to the editor from New Yorker magazine came out, and that brought up even more interest from neighbors and friends around this area. And so by the time November 7th came, we had about 20, 25 people in our area that went to that presentation.
And when we got there, George Phillips, of course, was there, but also Brandon Murr, who was the Chief Executive Officer of Reclaim, as well as the IT officer and the Chief Operating Officer.
And the Communications Office. Everybody was there.
Very well.
They really thought that there were going to be pickets out front. So we had several meetings and strategized around this, and what we decided was this is not a picketing event. This is an event where you go in and you ask questions. But what we did is we met and we decided what questions we wanted asked and answered.
And what follow-up questions.
And what follow-up. And who was going to do them.
With the insistence that everybody stay very civil, because we didn't want that as an excuse to close it.
So anyway, we went to that meeting, and that's where all hell broke loose, because they really did bring the entire team of Reclaim New York there. They were very concerned, and the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce was very ticked off at us. Because
wait a minute. Can I just clarify, because the Delaware Chamber of Commerce was totally behind Reclaim New York?
Yes.
Okay, so good to know.
They sponsored it.
Good to know.
They sponsored it.
And you think that they know exactly what it was that they were sponsoring?
To be quite honest, and I'll try to be as fair as I can, you know, right now, people on the right are seeing exactly what we're seeing and seeing something totally different. And so they're looking at it as, oh, good, transparency. Oh, this is great. We need transparency because we do have a corrupt state. You know, so I think that they were looking at it as something good, and they put out a statement that they wanted to be known as an organization that allows different perspectives to be aired, which is fine. So the Reclaim people did their spiel about the affordability crisis and how we need transparency, and the only way to get it is to foil. So they did their talk, and then we were allowed to ask questions. Well, it got pretty crazy. And let me just give you a couple of the questions that really got them crazy. One was, we had the executive director of this economic engine join us, and anytime they gave a stat, she countered it. Yeah, it frustrated the hell out of them that they would say, in Delaware County, blah, 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 and Peg would just say, excuse me, but that's not right. Let me tell you what the stat is and what my source is. Tell me what your source is.
One of the things they took great pride in the class and in Binghamton, saying that they successfully sued 6 townships in Long Island and Nassau and Suffolk County, 3 Republican and 3 Democrat, and they were as happy about foiling the Republicans as they were the Democrats. So the message we were getting was that all government, no matter what party you belong to, is bad.
And that goes right into where Steve Bannon is and the Mercer are. They're totally on, you know, the far right of libertarian. Yes. And, you know, what did he say at CPAC? Mm-hmm. You know, we have to deconstruct the administrative state.
Right.
So this is a microcosm of what they're doing in D.C. National.
Do you know if they're active in other states, or are they single?
We're trying to find that out.
Is this a testing ground for them?
I would say
it might be, but I ran the numbers on that to see if there was a Reclaim any other state. There isn't. There's something going on in Florida with a different name, but
it's called Transparency America.
Yeah.
And it's in Boca Raton.
Affordability, transparency. Affordability, transparency, reclaim. Those are the 3 operative terms. And
corruption.
FASO is on the 10 most endangered species list for Republican seats. They are here because CD19 is so important. It is purple, and they want to turn it deep red. And it is so important to find out what FASO's views are of Reclaim New York. And it's the exact same money behind Reclaim New York and his campaign. And does he sign off on their agenda, which is attacking our schools, our villages, and our towns, or does he not? John Faso is the same as Reclaim New York. The reason that Steve Bannon and Mercer and Singer are in CD19 is because of John Faso.
Yeah. So his campaign has gotten money from the Mercers
and Singers.
So this was another. Oh, you mean Faso?
$700,000.
No, he's gotten 1.2 million. He's gotten 1.2 million. He got 500,000 in his primary, and then he got more money from Mercer for the general.
So here's a couple things that will just support what we're talking about. At this meeting on Friday, this past Friday, the 7th, one of our people asked the question, "Who are your donors?"
Great.
They would not allow.
Okay.
He would not say.
They would not allow an utterance.
Well, and this is from an organization that is pursuing transparency.
Exactly.
To be quite honest, the guy who asked it was wonderful. He said, in the same vein as Deep Throat saying, "Follow the money," who are your donors?
I love it.
And so, after the guy said, and this was Brandon Muir, the executive director, said, I will not reveal that. We all said, "But you're the one seeking transparency." He said, "Oh, I can't reveal them because, some of this has become a little controversial, and they might be, and these are business people, and they might be singled out." Oh, those poor babies.
Yes.
So, I mean, they let me tell you that the House was hysterical then.
Yeah.
The other question, two more questions I raised was, since I've been since I have a background in corruption investigations, I need to understand the thinking of Steve Bannon and Rebecca Mercer when they established this, and why they settled with this particular model to increase the efficacy and the integrity of our state.
Yeah, but and this model, but also this district, they're here. They're here for us.
Yeah.
That's for real.
Well, and that question was raised already, but we wanted to know. I wanted to know not so much about the district, but about their thinking. And I wanted to get Steve Bannon and Rebecca Mercer out because she is running this now. So, and the other question that I think that Frank asked that I think was most important, that we had been hearing lots and lots of rumors about, was what do you do after Reclaim? What's coming up? So, Frank,
what I asked him, I said, well, now you have all this information out. Your mission is accomplished. What is that the end of Reclaim New York? And this was to Brandon Murray, and it was just at the end. So there were people like leaving, and so it was almost a one-on-one with him. And he said that, well, yeah, pretty much that's that'll be the completion. We just want to make sure that there's transparency throughout the state. He says, however, there's some of us starting a second organization. It's going to be a 501c4. And that has other goals in mind. And then he just kind of disappeared. He just
he walked away.
He walked away, and I said, "Well, wait."
So that is the most insidious part of this. They're planning.
Yeah.
They're planning to raise money, to lobby, and to put their own candidates up. And it's interesting. I was hearing a news thing today about how Trump is forming his own kind of Republican Party. He's getting rid of a lot of old, kind of seasoned old hands, mostly because of vindictiveness. They didn't support him or whatever. And I have a feeling that they're not even going to care about what the local areas want for their candidates, Republican candidates. I think that they're ultimate goal is to see how much they can, see who they can put in that's going to be an ultra-libertarian.
And it sounds like with Faso, they might consider him already in their pocket.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Well, they can push him. They can push him to the right. If
They don't have to push him anywhere. He's going there because he's following the money.
No, it's true, but he'd have to publicly show support, fealty to them, I imagine, which will work in our favor if we educate people about the organization and show his ties to it and how he benefits from contributions by the Mercers. Maybe it's a chink in the armor.